the DEA popped into this in and out. I'm going to say in and out of the scene, but knowing who they were without having exact proof was amazingly difficult but possible. And once you knew who they were, they really threw a baby tantrum on how you got your information. It was amazing how once you called their bluff on being a DEA agent, how they would actually stop everything. I can remember an incident where they all poured out of a house. I'm not a violent person, but I did hold a gun against the DEA agent's head saying, not to bother me anymore. I knew he's an agent. And every single house on the block poured out with the man in blue, as his code word was. And there was never a consequence of that, except on paper and litigation. The DEA really makes sure that you wind yourself in a tight little web so that when you are in trouble, good luck getting out of trouble. The reason why I'm able to do this interview is I have been tried and convicted. There's some things that I can't say, but I'm not going to mention names, times, and places. Undercover informant. How can you tell undercover informants? Well, the Colombians had a staff of lawyers and inside people. The Cali cartel had integrity. Now, people are going to who listen to this and have been in the Cali cartel will probably agree with me about this. People who have been in the Medellin cartel, you're a little rougher around the edges. Usually the robberies would end up, person that's going to rob a large amount of this has inside information. Usually they fumbled the ball and they would end up getting busted because they don't understand the distribution of it. They're not going with the Colombian cartel. They're going on their own whim of what they can distribute, and that's how they get wrapped up. Well, the name of the game here was to stay away from the government. Once you knew that they're on you and you were hot, it was really your responsibility to not get involved anymore. You had to drop out of the game. But of course, the lure of easy money always is the one that pulls people back into it. When the government was trying to penetrate your operation is kind of almost psychic, or it's behavioral. The DEA didn't act right. DEA was like, well, how do you know we're DEA? What made you say we're DEA? Well, when you're sitting there at a high-end restaurant and you have people behind you, you always bring a person to watch your back, and you make sure that he's there a half hour early. You pay that person well, and you just watch the environment. And one thing the DEA does different than a real person in the cartel is the DEA pushes you and challenges you. Well, come up with it, or show us what's real, or they challenge you to show off, like that's not the way it works. And then when it comes time to pay the bill, that was for the restaurant. It was really weird. If they're really a bala and they're really rolling and they're that important, they wouldn't look in their wallet and count the money like it's a per diem. It's too clinical. It's too pragmatic. It's too government-like. Let me tell you, when you're sitting down with a cartel member, they shit money. They have lots of money. They're not going to be counting what's in their damn wallet. In fact, you're basically laundering money every time you spend it. You can't wait to spend this stuff. The sooner you get that money off you, the more you got away with the crime. So really, DEA, you're lacking there. And I hate to say it, but you just turn yourself in by doing that. And when the litigation came down, you come up with all these lies and excuses. But to be honest with you, that behavior there has no flow or continuity to it. DEA agent's different than an informant or an affiant. DEA agent's gonna count his money like if that's his per diem, it's clinical, and he's adding in his head. It's not normal behavior, it's office behavior. If you carry that office behavior with you, you're gonna set off the wrong signals, of course. I would hire people to look for the police and the police would eavesdrop in, and they would have recordings, and they would sit on the table. I would pick a fine restaurant, and it would always be like a week before the meeting, and I already knew I was dealing with the DEA agent, and it was just ironic to watch how they would set up a table next to me and the waiter and everybody that was working for the police, and that before you even made the meeting, if you were like to leave your house and go to Safeway, I would have a camera recording, and they would pop up and look at my house through the windows and stuff, not knowing that I already had an edge on them. How I had the edge is by their behavior. How did I know the DEA agents? By their behavior. It's kind of psychic, but it's their behavior. The behavior was too clinical and too pragmatic. People, once again, who are laundering money, who are making real easy money, and are that chaotic, basically don't have the structure of a DEA agent. And the rules are so hard for a DEA agent to make a bust that they have to follow those rules. And you can see their mechanicalness through them. If you're sober, you can see this. I can see if they get you drunk, and I do remember the DEA sending over people with booze to give me. I never drank. I wouldn't want to party with them. I had nothing in common with that. They did like to lay down booze. Booze is legal. They could not give you drugs, but they could give you booze and get you all softened up. But it didn't work with me. I'm a non-drinker, and that always worked in my favor, and I'm thankful that I was a non-drinker, and I was never really part of that. But the DEA would lay down a lot of booze. They really wanted you to drink with them, get loose and kind of get into this, losing your inhibitions stuff. Not me. The DEA can plant seeds to where there's jealousy. One of the dirtiest tricks was if you had a wife or a girlfriend, if they were just ready to bust you, they'd show your wife pictures of you with another girl, and that wife would start singing like a bird, and you are screwed. DEA does those dirty tricks, and they will show the photos, and they will humiliate you, and you will be screwed. Your wife may not be able to testify you in a court of law, but she just opened and spilled her guts to the point to where you wish you would have never, ever had another girlfriend. And so they will do those tricks to you, and they do get away with it. Women all the time. I've had some very, very good fortunate luck that I've had policewomen sit in my Corvette convertible and say, I just want you to know I've been undercover capacity for the police department, and I'm not going to arrest you today. Show me a badge and say you're a single father, you're doing a great job. For that, we're not going to arrest you, but your partners will be arrested. The dirtiest trick I've seen the U.S. government do is displace people. They would take you against your will and drop you off in some country or some place in the United States with no money, in your Bermuda shorts in the snow, and make you find your way back home. And that humility and that kind of behavior is their idea. I don't know if they think it's funny or if that's the way they do things, but they do those things. And if you've heard those stories, they're true. You could be on an airplane in an international flight, and the next thing you know is Interpol will just pluck you off that airplane and search your luggage and take away all your money and make you prove that it's not yours. Yeah, don't prove it's yours. Prove it's not yours, and get you wrapped up in some legal litigation to where you just don't even care about the money anymore, and then leave you without a ticket home and a way home or your passport, and you're stranded. Those situations have happened to me personally, and they leave you really in an ambiguous situation. If a person doesn't have the right resources, you're going to be pretty screwed. I don't know these days how they do it, but I've heard cases where in Iran or India and stuff like that happens. But back then, it was in places that you went to, you basically were followed and stripped of your money and your identity, and you had to figure out your way out of that box. Government, the DEA, I review their paperwork intensively, and they do make up stories, and they want to bust so bad. And if an officer is truly a DEA agent, not an informant or an affiant, but an agent, he wants to put a case together that sticks, but he's going to add stuff in there to make it sound bigger than it is. And he's going to speculate, and he's going to add things to your affidavit that's used against you in court. And if you're not represented well, you're going to go down for some stuff that really didn't happen. It could even sound very glamorous too. They can make you feel like you're bigger than you are, and you're going to go for that, but you're going to do some time with it. Revealed that to me in about a 100-page document when they took me to court and tried to bust me, and I got away with just possession when they tried to get me for distribution, multi-state. How they said they knew and how they knew is two different things. What they said they knew was a lot of it was lies. A lot of it was spending large amounts of sums of money, showing off, big shot syndrome. If you weren't using the drug and you weren't drinking, you were basically materialistic and showing off. And showing off is showboating will sink your ship. And I was a bit of a show off. It did alert certain channels. But ultimately, if somebody gets busted, they're going to say, look at so-and-so. Why do they have so much? What do you think's going on? DEA would fly over in their little tiny dinky planes all I could say is their behavior was so obvious to me. The only thing that I could say is one time my friend answered the phone and said, oh, it's the DEA agent again. And when I asked her, hey, how you doing? Why did your friend say that? I go, what do you mean say that? He just says DEA agent. How did he know that information? I'm here at Denny's waiting for you. I just flew in a little Cessna. I'm ready for the shipment. I'm standing out in front of $1 million worth of product, and I ain't giving him nothing. Zero. I know exactly what he is. I know exactly what he wants, and he doesn't know enough to even be privy to what I have. So I'd rather starve than give that particular DEA agent anything. And he was supposed to be a medal award-winning agent that was undercover capacity and had medals of honor. And he's a Vietnam soldier that turned to DEA agent and up and down. But I'm sorry, his protocol was so stringent that he was obvious. And his little airplane didn't fly with me. His pressure and stress got to the point where he was so eager for a bus that he started getting forceful, and he sent an undercover agent to my private house who was offering booze. He sent a Cuban undercover operative, and that person was actually a affiant, according to the paperwork. Description of affiant is a person undercover capacity trying to penetrate the central core of organized network. That didn't fly with me either, and they were stressing me. And I just finally had to whip out a machine gun against their affiant and say, you know what, I want you away from me. I don't know why you're asking me for drugs. I don't know why you're asking me questions that are personal, and you need to go away. And all of a sudden he said, I'm with the men in blue, and police poured out of every direction in every corner. They never did anything to me for that. They revealed themselves. They tried to get my neighbors for me to confess that I own land and property and businesses. And I finally all added up that I was being surveillanced for quite some time.